two brothers were locked in a deadly struggle, their father watching impassively. But when their fight threatened to engulf their little sister, the man reacted instantly, pulling her protectively into his arms. She was too young, too innocent to be caught in this brutal royal power struggle. Yet, in the next moment, a crimson magic circle flared into existence in the girl's small hand. A deafening explosion followed, abruptly halting the brothers' deadly dance. Everyone believed the girl a prodigy, unaware that within her tiny frame dwelled the soul of a 300-year-old witch capable of annihilating entire nations with a flick of her wrist. Betrayed by the only human she had ever trusted, she was reborn as the youngest imperial princess, consumed by a thirst for vengeance. She reached inward, testing the limits of this new body's magical power. A moment later, she was stunned. She possessed near 5-star level magic. In her past life, she had only reached 2 stars. This body, it was a prodigy. Perhaps conquering the continent this time around wouldn't be so bad after all. But for now, she was still a helpless infant, relying on her maids to change her diapers. If shame could kill, she would have died 1,000 deaths. Today, her maid was taking her for a stroll when they unexpectedly encountered the emperor. An oppressive aura radiated from him, making the maid tremble. She hastily bowed, but the baby girl simply stared at the unfamiliar man. Not bad looking, she thought. The emperor, gazing at his daughter's raven black, silver hair and crimson eyes, noted their striking resemblance to the previous emperor. It was a clear indication of a pure bloodline. He reached out to examine her further, but suddenly, a surge of power coursed through the girl's body. Overwhelmed by the sensation, tears welled in her eyes. She grabbed the man's hand and bit down. Toothless, the bite was painless. The emperor chuckled. This child, neither crying nor screaming, but biting instead, intriguing. "We shall call her Leonia," he declared. "May your teeth grow sharp, child, sharp enough to survive the royal fray." He then instructed the maid to take Leonia to choose her sword. The swords were, in fact, the assembled guards. They would swear their lives to protect the royal family and play a crucial role in the wars of succession. In this empire, the throne was earned through fratricide. This madman, the emperor, had murdered 37 of his own siblings to claim his crown. Such a weighty decision, entrusted to a 6-month-old infant. Leonia couldn't help but think her father was insane. Thankfully, she retained her memories. She pointed a tiny finger towards an unassuming, short-haired woman in the crowd. The hushed room erupted in murmurs. Letting a baby choose her protector was a farce, wasn't it? But the emperor smiled knowingly. Perhaps the rumors were true. He had heard yesterday in the palace that the emperor held this youngest daughter in high regard. He had even broken his agreement with the second prince to witness the princess's choice himself. This seemingly ordinary woman was, in fact, Case Aubert, the continent's most powerful necromancer, capable of raising armies of the dead. The princess, it seemed, held great promise, and she was undeniably adorable. He longed to poke her chubby cheeks. His heart ached with an almost unbearable sweetness. Just then, Leonia turned, her gaze locking with his. The man, overwhelmed, fainted with a smile on his face. Leonia was bewildered. He fainted just from looking at her? Was she really that ugly? She shrugged it off. More importantly, the necromancer, Case Aubert, was now hers. With Case's help, continental domination was one step closer. But when she reached out her tiny hands, seeking a comforting embrace, Case instinctively recoiled. Leonia froze, her face a mask of virtue, Wei Chu, a mixture of grievance and injustice. She'd wanted to interact with him like a normal person, but he'd only distanced himself. Left with no other choice, she resorted to her ultimate weapon. In the next second, tears streamed down her face. Hayes panicked, thinking the imperial princess was unwell. She immediately dragged a healer in from outside, urging him to attend to Leonia. Leonia was utterly bewildered. She wasn't sick, but her small hand was already grasped by the healer. A gentle surge of spiritual energy flowed forth. The healer was shocked. Within the imperial princess, a chaotic magical force raged. If left untreated, it could be life-threatening. Leonia glared at him. He must be a quack. She felt perfectly fine, but after the treatment, she had to admit it felt wonderful. Case watched the sleeping little girl. He couldn't resist poking her cheek. She was so adorable, like a little rabbit. He silently vowed to protect the little princess with his life. a grubby rabbit doll, treasured by Leonia, clutched even in her sleep. It had belonged to her mother since childhood. The doll was imbued with a rich spiritual energy that flowed into Leonia whenever she held it. When she awoke, she found herself being carried along a dark path. Am I being kidnapped? She wondered. Overhearing the conversation between the maid and Case, she learned the emperor had ordered them to move to the Black Rose Palace. Case was puzzled. The palace had been unoccupied for years. Legend had it that the previous crown prince had murdered the entire royal family there, and ghosts were said to haunt its halls. Captivated by Leonia's charm, Herrick had even pleaded with the emperor to rescind the order. How can you bear to send her there? He'd asked. But the emperor insisted it was Leonia's mother's dying wish for her daughter to live in the place she had once called home. Now, their only hope lay with Case. The continent's strongest spiritualist, he was tasked with ensuring Leonia's safety. But Leonia wasn't afraid. She was filled with curiosity about the palace. She sensed a familiar spiritual energy, the same as her rabbits, growing stronger as they approached. She waved her small hands, urging the maid to hurry inside. Suddenly, a figure blocked their path. It was the fourth prince, Nichol. He'd come to intimidate the not-yet one-year-old princess. But that was before he saw her. The sight of Leonia stunned him. How can anyone be so cute? He felt his heart leap in his chest. Then he noticed the grubby doll in Leonia's arms. How can you give her such trash? Throw it away. Such a lovely little sister deserved an expensive, high-quality doll. A gift from him, of course. The maid explained it was a gift from Leonia's deceased mother. Such a sweet child, with such a sad story. He'd actually planned to bully her. What a monster he was. Hey, you don't live so pitifully, okay? He raised a hand, releasing a gentle wave of spiritual energy. It's the sun god's blessing. Leonia reached out, grasping at the warmth. It felt comforting. Nichol instinctively reached for her chubby little hand, then pulled back. I'm leaving now. Don't lock the door. I'll be back. But Case and the maid decided to lock the door immediately, determined to keep him from disturbing the princess again. 2.5 years passed. Leonia was now 3 years old. She had learned to walk. She could communicate normally. The only thing that hadn't changed was her undeniable cuteness. Nichol visited her almost every day. He would reach out with wicked hands, squeezing her chubby cheeks, only to be thwarted by Case. The two often bickered, like rivals vying for affection. Watching them, Leonia's expression turned somber. The scene stirred up memories from a past she couldn't quite grasp. In her previous life, while wandering, she happened upon a man. He offered her a piece of bread and proposed to take care of her. Young and naive, she didn't understand the need for caution when faced with such seemingly selfless kindness. She became dependent on him, following him everywhere, believing her days of hunger were finally over. But instead of salvation, endless torment awaited. The man was obsessed with infusing the power of magic rings into human bodies, creating living weapons. Countless children suffered at his hands, but Leonia, even then, somehow endured. And so she became a witch. With newfound power, she immediately fled that hellish place. Yet, fatefully, she encountered the man again. Out of pity, Leonia saved him. She used her considerable power to help him ascend the throne. But this act of mercy was met with betrayal. Now, she trusts no one. Nichol interrupted her reverie. Seeing her sorrowful expression, he assumed she was unwell and rushed to summon a physician. Leonia caught his hand, assuring him she was fine. Can you two please stop making so much noise? Nichol obediently covered his mouth, but a wide grin still plastered his face, much to Leonia's exasperation. Suddenly, he placed his hand on her cheek again. Don't be sad. Big Brother will always be here for you. I won't let anyone hurt you. Case echoed the sentiment. As Her Highness's sword, I swear to protect her with my life. See, you already have 2 people protecting you. There will be more. So little bunny, you should be happy. Leonia wavered. Could she really trust them? The little girl, who had endured 300 years of solitude, finally experienced the feeling of being protected. But the price of this protection seemed to be the constant kneading of her chubby cheeks. Stop it. I'm not a child. I'm a magnificent witch who has lived for over 300 years. Seeing her brother tremble beside her, she finally felt satisfied. This was the awe witch like her deserved. Unbeknownst to her, her brother was simply charmed by her childish lisp. Just then, a wave of dark energy surged into the room. Sensing the danger, Case and Nichol activated their magic circles, instantly vanquishing the lurking assassin. Seeing that Leonia was unharmed, they began to examine the assassin's identity. Why did you have to finish him off so quickly? I was going to interrogate him. Hey, don't look at me. I didn't kill him either. At that moment, Hylet entered. It turned out he was the one who had intervened. You're so slow. How can you protect Her Highness like this? Learn from me. Isn't that right, Your Highness? Leonia, however, wasn't impressed. She turned her head away. Even her back is adorable, truly worthy of an imperial princess. Suddenly, Hylet remembered his purpose. He was there to inform Nykel that the second prince was holding a birthday banquet in 2 days. The emperor had decreed that all members of the royal family must attend. Nykel was startled. Does all include little Bunny? He was relieved when Hylet answered in the negative. Suddenly, Leonia tugged at his clothes, expressing her desire to attend the banquet. Nykel refused without hesitation. The second prince was practically insane, and his banquet was sure to be dangerous. Then I'll just sneak in. I'm going to conquer the continent, you know. The banquet is a perfect opportunity to assess the other princes. So, on the day of the banquet, she secretly hypnotized Case and then used flight magic to sneak away. But halfway there, she realized she was lost. I should have looked at a map. Just then, she noticed something interesting. Countless pebbles on the ground were arranged to spell out glory to the great empire. These must be here to flatter the first emperor. When I become empress, Leonia mused, I'll be even more fabulous than him. I'll issue a new decree. Cuteness is hereby forbidden. But for now, her thoughts turned mischievous. I might as well wreck this place. It's the proper conduct for a witch like me. The area was protected by magic. The barrier would trigger an alarm if touched. But such things were child's play for Leonia. With a casual flick of her wrist, the barrier dissolved. But just as Leonia prepared to unleash her mischief, a figure appeared behind her. It was the emperor. What are you doing here? He demanded. Leonia froze, holding her breath. Just then, Hylet arrived. Leonia saw him as her savior and quickly called out a greeting. Hylet didn't disappoint. The imperial princess is speaking to me, he thought, ecstatic. Just seeing her smile felt like reaching the peak of existence. A sudden slap brought him back to reality. The emperor pointed at Leonia. What is this thing? Leonia was bewildered. Was he talking about her? Hylet, equally taken aback, explained, This is your daughter, your majesty, the one you favor so highly. The emperor's expression clearly showed he didn't remember. Leonia fumed. If she could have defeated him, she would have buried him on the spot. After a lengthy explanation from Hylet, the emperor's memory finally stirred. His voice sharp, he asked, Why are you here? Leonia, intimidated, didn't answer. Instead, she put on her most innocent, sweet face, hoping it would work on the emperor. But he seemed immune to her charms. However, it struck Hylet's heart. This is His Majesty the Emperor, he reminded her. You must bow and call him father. Leonia pouted. I don't want to, she declared, then loudly shouted, Daddy, Daddy, can you take me to the birthday banquet? To her surprise, the emperor picked her up. Leonia was overjoyed. It seemed to have worked, but the emperor's next words made her freeze. How did you break the barrier? Her mind raced. Feigning innocence, she asked, What's a barrier? The emperor was speechless, but he couldn't do anything with such a small child. He set her down. Come with me. I'll take you to the banquet. But Leonia wasn't satisfied. Tugging on his clothes, she pleaded, Daddy, can you carry me again? Hylet was stunned. Knowing the emperor's temper, he feared the worst and offered to carry her himself. Leonia refused. No, I want Daddy to carry me. To his astonishment, the emperor obliged. He scooped her up into his arms. Hylet couldn't believe his eyes. His Majesty is letting the princess act spoiled? This is unprecedented. That boy is insane. A servant placed the cutlery 2 millimeters off, and he threatened to strangle her with a ruler. The servant could only kneel and beg for mercy. Even when the fourth prince, Nykel, pleaded for her, he wouldn't budge. He only relented when Nykel invoked their father. If I weren't afraid your blood would dirty father's eyes, you wouldn't live to see tomorrow. Just then, the emperor entered carrying Leonia. The second prince was surprised. Nevertheless, he respectfully invited the emperor to his seat. The emperor gazed at Leonia for a moment. She really is quite endearing, he thought, almost reluctant to put her down. But I must treat everyone equally. With that, he placed her on the seat. Leonia tugged at his clothes. Daddy, you have to carry me again next time, okay? The emperor responded by smiling and poking her cheek. The robust second prince seethed with jealousy. Father is doting on her. He resolved to eliminate Leonia during the banquet. Father Emperor surely won't interfere, Leonia mused. He never gets involved in the succession struggles. Soon, all the imperial princes and princesses arrived, ready for the meal. But Leonia stared at her fork for a long moment. The robust second prince looked uneasy. Had he detected his own reflection in the utensil, a sign of the poison? The poison he'd chosen was colorless and odorless, remarkably subtle. How could he have possibly discovered it? Unbeknownst to him, Leonia was thinking, this mithril fork would fetch a handsome price if I sold it. Where's the food? Leonia grumbled, tapping her fork impatiently against the table. I'm starving. The poison on the utensils, however, was designed to lose its potency upon impact. The second prince's face hardened. She had neutralized his poison with such ease. It seemed this imperial princess was not to be underestimated. Suddenly aware of the gazes fixed upon her, Leonia reached for an apple to alleviate the awkwardness. But her hand bumped the table, sending the apple tumbling to the floor. The second prince could no longer contain himself. She'd even discovered the poisoned apple. She couldn't be allowed to live through the day. He whistled sharply, and in an instant, hidden assassins swarmed the room. Within moments, all the other imperial children were restrained. Archers, aim for the princess, the second prince commanded. Let's start with her. Once you're all eliminated, he sneered, his face contorted with malice. I'll be the sole heir. The emperor, however, had noticed the assassins all along. He'd assumed he wouldn't care who fell victim to the inevitable power plays. But when the arrow aimed at Leonia, his heart lurched. In a flash, he shielded Leonia with his own body, absorbing the volley of attacks. The second prince gaped in astonishment. But you never interfere in the succession struggles. The emperor's voice, icy with fury, cut through the chaos. She's too young, and her sword isn't present. She cannot participate in this war. Royal law dictated that before coming of age, an imperial child could only participate in the succession battles if their ceremonial sword was at their side. The second prince's face fell. Forgive me, I overlooked that. Leonia, however, had her eyes fixed elsewhere. She looked towards Nikel, the fourth prince, now surrounded by enemies. Gripping the emperor's collar, she pleaded silently for his intervention. Hylot approached, reminding Leonia that interference was forbidden. No one could intervene in the succession battles. But Nikel, his sword isn't here either, Leonia cried. Nikel's sword wasn't missing. It had been broken in a previous skirmish. Meanwhile, Nikel, completely encircled, channeled his magical energy, preparing for a desperate last stand. The second prince ordered a barrage of ice arrows. Panic seized Leonia. One thought consumed her. He can't die. He's my silly older brother. He's always protected me. As the ice arrows hurtled towards Nikel, a crimson magic circle blazed into existence in Leonia's hands. A violent explosion of fire erupted, separating Nikel from his attackers. Every eye in the hall turned to Leonia. I'm exposed, she thought, her heart pounding. Completely exposed. The truth was out. The 3-year-old princess could wield magic. Unable to bear the sight of her brother in danger, Leonia had instinctively unleashed a fireball. It had successfully deflected the ice arrows, but the seemingly effortless spell was a level 4 incantation. For a 3-year-old, it was an impossible feat the weight of all those gazes pressed down on her. Just as Leonia scrambled for an explanation, Nikel rushed to her side. Little rabbit, he exclaimed, you're so amazing. I would have been in serious trouble if you hadn't stepped in. Leonia feigned ignorance. I don't know what happened, she mumbled, turning her head away in embarrassment. The fireball just came out. The excuse was flimsy, even to her own ears. You're really bad at lying, little rabbit. A long-absent smile graced the emperor's lips. He gently patted Leonia's head. I never expected you to be so remarkable. It seems it's time to find you a tutor. His smile vanished, replaced by a frigid gaze directed at the disheveled second prince. That will be all for today. Everyone is dismissed. The second prince, still reeling from shock, could only think, did father just smile? But it wasn't at me. I've disappointed him again. Hylot, meanwhile, gave Leonia a thumbs up. Your Highness, you were magnificent. He quickly caught up with the emperor, a smug expression on his face. I told you the Imperial Princess was extraordinary. Doesn't she perfectly meet your expectations? I hope he can firmly establish his position before the first prince returns. Then you'll surely support him, won't you? The emperor glanced away at the mention of his eldest son, the image of Leonia adorably calling him Papa flashing through his mind. Perhaps. Meanwhile, the second prince approached Leonia. Thank you for saving me. Leonia blinked. What was he talking about? Suddenly, she noticed the wound on the second prince's chest. Nikel's desperate, final blow had actually landed. If Leonia hadn't intervened, both of them could have been fatally wounded. Why did you save us? Do you dislike seeing us fight? She couldn't exactly admit she'd been trying to save Nikel and had inadvertently scared the second prince in the process. Oh well, no need to explain. He'll just fill in the blanks himself. The second prince, seeing her silence, took it as confirmation. So that's it. That's why you neutralized the poison I put in the banquet hall's refreshments. Leonia's eyes widened. Poison? At the banquet? The second prince suddenly conjured a chunk of ice. Consider this a reward for saving me. The facets aren't quite perfect. I'll give you a better one next time. Leonia looked closer, realizing it was a severed arm. Couldn't he at least ask if I wanted this thing? A week passed. Leonia wandered through the gardens alone. Nikel had been bedridden since the duel. Unable to spend time with her brother, she'd been subjected to the second prince's attentions. He'd visited her every day, each time bearing a bizarre gift. Thankfully, after 20-odd rejections, he'd finally given up. Now, she was undeniably bored. Unaware, someone was approaching her from behind, teeth gritted. A moment later, a hand slammed against the back of her head. It was the 8th prince, the most skilled fire mage in the royal family. He discovered that Leonia's magical talent far surpassed his own. Consumed by jealousy, he decided to eliminate her. He failed to notice the icy killing intent radiating from her small frame. In a flash, she unleashed a bolt of lightning, sending him flying 300 meters. Undeterred, he retaliated with his prized fire magic. Leonia prepared an ice spell for her counterattack, but suddenly sensed a powerful presence approaching. She abruptly slapped herself across the face. The 8th prince stared dumbfounded. He hadn't realized it was the emperor. Leonia clung to the emperor's leg. Papa, he hit me. Papa, I can't beat him. Help me. The emperor sighed. He wasn't blind. He wondered why Leonia was hiding her power. Could Hylet be right? Does she crave my affection? Is she feigning weakness to gain my attention? He scooped Leonia into his arms, gently patting her back. 8th prince, there's a rule in the Empire against unsanctioned duels. Have you forgotten? The 8th prince's face crumpled. I was the one who got hit. Leonia, not quite satisfied, nudged her father. Scold him some more, Papa. The emperor chuckled. 8th prince, for your blatant disregard of the rules, you are confined to your quarters for 1 week. Leonia was surprised. She hadn't expected her father to go this far for her. She stuck her tongue out at the 8th prince. That's what you get for hitting me. Seeing this, the 8th prince couldn't hold back any longer. He wanted to pour out the Wei Chu, the mixture of injustice and resentment, simmering in his heart. But all he received in return was an icy glare from the emperor. Do you have any objections? Those few words were enough to make him shrink back, his bravado dissolving. Humiliated, he slunk away. Leonia, thoroughly pleased with herself, nuzzled against the emperor in his embrace. Thank you, father. The emperor, seizing the opportunity, finally voiced the question that had been nagging at him. Why have you been hiding your strength? This is the ruthless imperial court. Only by displaying your power can you earn respect. Leonia's small hands clenched. Because I haven't been strong enough to protect those I care about. So, you consider Nikel one of those you care about? Is that why you saved him? Leonia nodded in agreement. Do you understand what it means to protect someone? Her gaze was unwavering, filled with a surprising conviction. It means not letting those you care about get hurt. That's what protecting someone is. The emperor chuckled. So young, yet shouldering such responsibility. I mentioned finding you a tutor. Let's go meet him now. To prevent her foolish older brother from getting hurt again, Leonia had made a decision. She would hide her powers no longer. This would be the first time she displayed her true strength in front of her family. Channeling her magic, a fierce surge of fire enveloped her. The fireball she launched successfully intercepted the attack aimed at her brother. She had feared that revealing her power would lead to her family distancing themselves from her. Instead, she was met with even more affection. Even her usually aloof father, now treated her as his most precious treasure. Witnessing Leonia's exceptional magical talent, the emperor was even more determined to find her a suitable teacher. He already had someone in mind, the current master of the magic tower, Gelos. Although the emperor wasn't particularly fond of the man, Gelos, as the empire's most accomplished mage, was, in the emperor's opinion, the only one qualified to tutor the imperial princess. They soon arrived at Gelos's location. Upon seeing the adorable princess, Gelos immediately moved forward, intending to scoop her into his arms. This instantly drew the emperor's ire. "What do you think you're doing? Your Majesty, you asked me to be her tutor. I must first assess her magical power." Leonia's expression shifted. She didn't need anyone poking around in her magic. Gelos simply stared at her, a thoughtful look on his face. Then he cast a time spell, freezing everything except Leonia. Panic flared within her. "What are you doing?" Gelos, in contrast, remained utterly composed. Rumor has it that the imperial family of the Hades Empire shares a common trait. They all possess eyes of the same color. But you are different. I sense a very ancient soul within you. As he spoke, he took Leonia's small hand in his. "I'm curious, who are you?" Leonia's eyes widened. He had seen right through her, down to her very core. "Just what are you trying to do?" Gelos extended his hand with a playful glint in his eyes. "Are you still going to refuse to be my student?" Leonia reluctantly placed her hand in his. He smiled, seemingly satisfied, assuming she had agreed. But his smugness was short-lived. Leonia unleashed a bolt of lightning magic. As he recoiled in pain, Leonia seized the opportunity, expending all her magic to break Gelos's time spell. The exertion left her gasping for breath. The emperor, now free from the time stop, saw Leonia's weakened state and erupted in a furious display of power. A suffocating pressure instantly filled the room. "I know you use a time-stopping spell. What did you do to Leonia?" Unfazed, Gelos maintained his irritatingly cheerful demeanor. "I advise you to restrain your power, Your Majesty. Otherwise, the princess might not be able to withstand it." Leonia finally managed to draw a breath, the pressure easing slightly. "You had better give me a reasonable explanation." Gelos offered a flimsy excuse. "I was merely testing the princess's magic in a controlled environment. Her Highness is quite remarkable. I would be delighted to be her tutor. I'm sure she wouldn't refuse, would you, Princess?" Leonia was about to refuse again, but Gelos mouthed something to her. "If you dare refuse, I'll tell the Emperor everything that just happened." Leonia's face fell. He wouldn't dare threaten me. But she couldn't fight back. If her father, the Emperor, discovered his daughter had been possessed, he would surely have her executed. With no other choice, Leonia reluctantly agreed. Gelos smiled, satisfied. "I look forward to working with you, Princess." Later that evening, Leonia was consumed with worry. How did he figure out my identity? She wondered. And he's always so infuriatingly smug. She didn't realize the very person she was thinking about had somehow appeared beside her. "Are you talking about me?" he asked. "You wound me, Princess." Leonia jumped, startled. She hadn't sensed him approach at all. "I need to get stronger, quickly," she thought. "I'm very curious about your identity," Gelos continued. "So I've decided to stay by your side and observe you closely. Of course," he added with a smirk, "it would be even better if we could become closer." Leonia was speechless. If she were strong enough, she would have already gotten rid of him. Then she'd truly have some peace and quiet. Suddenly, he grabbed her small hand. "Don't worry," he said. "You'll come looking for me soon enough." Meanwhile, Nikel, having recovered from his injuries, was on his way to see Leonia when he spotted the second prince lurking suspiciously near her palace doors. "What are you doing here?" Nikel asked. The second prince shushed him and gestured for him to look ahead. The eighth prince, eyed, was seething with rage. He was ordering the destruction of all the rabbit dolls in Leonia's palace. He also instructed his guards to find an opportunity to eliminate Leonia. Unbeknownst to him, the two princes outside the door witnessed everything. "He wants to kill those adorable little bunnies?" Nikel exclaimed, incredulous. "He's asking for it." The second prince's eyes flashed with anger. "Let's form an alliance," he proposed. The two brothers, who usually fought at the drop of a hat, unexpectedly agreed to join forces. Their shared love for their little sister fueled their outrage at the eighth prince's intentions. They decided to teach Ida a lesson. But a moment later, Nikel's face clouded over. He had just turned 12. In the Empire, all royals who reached the age of 12 were required to embark on a journey of training and experience. "I won't have much time left with Leonia," he thought sadly. "I wanted to give her more gifts." This time, his gift wouldn't be something strange like a chunk of ice. He had prepared an assortment of sweet candies. But as he approached Leonia's door, he was stopped by Keys. Leonia has given orders that no one is to disturb her during her magic training, Keys explained. I just want to share some sweets with my sister, Nicole insisted. If you stop me again, I'll turn you into an ice sculpture. Just as the two were about to clash, Leonia arrived. Seeing her exhaustion from magic training, Nicole's heart ached. Should I get you some water? He asked gently. No, Leonia replied. Will you spar with me? Nicole refused without hesitation. All he wanted was to share a meal with his sister before leaving the palace. He was often perceived as a madman by outsiders. And within the ruthless imperial family, he had learned to embrace a facade of ruthlessness himself. But deep down, he longed for a harmonious family life. However, being inarticulate, he kept these feelings buried within his heart. I can't fight you, he said, because you're weaker than me. I should be protecting you. Unsurprisingly, his words annoyed Leonia. What if I win? She challenged. Impossible, Nicole scoffed. If I win, you become my subordinate. After much persuasion from Leonia, he finally agreed to the duel. He resolved to be careful not to hurt her. But after several exchanges, he found himself struggling. He had no choice but to resort to his strongest ice magic. If he could just freeze Leonia's feet and immobilize her, it would all be over. But to his astonishment, Leonia used magic to levitate into the air and summoned a blazing inferno that melted his ice. Nicole stared in disbelief. He hadn't imagined his little sister capable of such advanced magic. Even if he continued, he had no chance of winning. I lost, Abik admitted. Just then, Leonia walked slowly towards him. She extended a hand. From now on, you are my subordinate. You are subordinate number one. Now, I have a task for you. She crouched down, drawing a symbol on the ground. Abik recognized it instantly. It was the emblem of the Carol Kingdom. I need you to gather information for me about this kingdom and about its emperor. She didn't notice Abik's darkening expression. And then, he asked, his voice tight, and then you'll have me assassinate the Carol Emperor, won't you? It was a suicide mission. You're no different from the other royals. He continued bitterly. So in a royal duel, the loser only has one path, death. Leonia's eyes widened. I just asked you to gather information. What are you talking about? That Carol King, she declared, her voice hardening. I will deal with him myself. He's the one who betrayed me and killed me in my past life. At her words, Abik suddenly covered his face and began to sob. I'm just a loser. I didn't expect you to be so kind to me. You really do consider me your person, don't you? He said, his voice thick with false emotion. You're so magnanimous. He then offered a sincere-sounding promise. I will definitely complete the task you've given me. In a flash, he arrived at Nicole's residence and swiftly disabled the defensive magic. He then blasted through the wall and entered Nicole's room. Nicole was stunned. Isn't this guy here to fight again? He wondered. Abik, meanwhile, casually dusted himself off. Nicole, he began, what is your relationship with Leonia? Hey, what's gotten into you? Nicole exclaimed, seeing as you're always running off to the Blackberry Palace. I guess you're nothing to her after all. But I'm different, Abik gloated. I've become Leonia's subordinate, and I'm number one. Even if you went to her now, you could only be number two. Jealous, aren't you? Nicole was rendered speechless by the taunt, but the word furious was clearly written across his face. Unsurprisingly, the two began to fight once more. Elsewhere, Jellos idly toyed with the fan in his hand. This is so boring, he sighed. Nothing interesting has happened lately. Then, he thought of Leonia, her fiery gaze and adorable face. The thought alone amused him. Come to think of it, it's been a while since I've seen her. He immediately set off to find her, but at that moment, an unexpected visitor arrived. It was the King of Carol, the very person Leonia yearned to take revenge upon, Lakis. Lakis even asked my brother to be his subordinate. Abik thought, still fuming. And instead of being offended, my brother felt honored. He even ran off to brag to Nicole about it. Nicole, speechless with rage, once again clashed with his brother. Meanwhile, Nicole finally found Leonia. He declared his desire to be her subordinate, promising to become even stronger than Abik and to protect her at all costs. Leonia was dumbfounded. Why were people so eager to serve her? But unable to resist Nicole's persistent pleas, she agreed. Nicole was overjoyed and immediately embraced Leonia. Abik, that guy's number one, right? Nicole asked. Then I want to be number 0. Leonia gently stroked his head. Whatever makes you happy, she replied. Having successfully extricated herself from Nicole, she headed to the library, intending to research the Carol Kingdom. After searching for a while, she found nothing but useless information. Suddenly, Jellos appeared behind her, startling her so badly she nearly fell down the stairs. Luckily, Jellos caught her just in time, but being so close allowed her to catch his scent. It was a scent she would never forget, the scent of Lacus. Enraged, she lashed out, wrapping a magical chain around Jellos' neck. Her sudden action left Jellos stunned, completely bewildered by her violent reaction. Leonia, too, realized her actions were excessive. I need an excuse, and fast. I can't let Jellos get suspicious. Did you hug a puppy before you came here? Don't you know I'm allergic to dog fur? Leonia faked a sneeze for added effect. Seeing this, Jellos immediately used magic to change his clothes. Leonia's eyes lit up as if she'd discovered a new continent. What kind of magic was that? Do you want to teach me? I want to learn. Her gaze was filled with longing. Of course I want to learn. You have to teach me. This girl is unbelievable. Just then, Jellos noticed the book in her hands. It seems you're quite interested in the Carol Kingdom. You must have been there before, haven't you? Jellos didn't try to hide it. He admitted to meeting with someone from the Carol Kingdom before coming here. But when Leonia pressed him for more details, he clammed up. I can't reveal anything else. I'm in a difficult position, you see. This is a matter between two great empires. If I choose the wrong side, things could get very unpleasant. Leonia suddenly grabbed his collar. Choose me. Choose me. You're my teacher, after all. Jellos slowly pulled out a gold coin. And what will you offer me in return? Leonia smirked. Oh, I have plenty of money. She snapped her fingers. A cascade of gold coins materialized out of thin air, piling up and overflowing throughout the library. If you choose me, all of this is yours. Jellos hesitated for a moment, then knelt before Leonia. I swear I will serve you to the best of my abilities. What do you think of this 200-year-old servant of yours? Leonia wasn't fooled. She knew his words were empty. I want you to swear on your spirit energy. Promise me 3 things. Spirit energy was tied to a mage's life force. Breaking such an oath would result in devastating backlash. Jellos understood the gravity of the situation, but he also trusted his judgment. State your conditions. First, you must never tell anyone the secret of my soul. Second, until I become empress, you will remain by my side. You will be at my beck and call. Finally, you will maintain your relationship with the Carol Empire and provide me with valuable intelligence. This contract will last until I come of age. Jellos breathed a sigh of relief. He thought she might demand a lifetime of servitude. He released his spirit energy, initiating the oath. A magical mark appeared on Leonia's hand. With the contract sealed, she fixed Jellos with a mischievous glint in her eye. Actually, this isn't my money. It belongs to the Empire's first emperor, Esquina. If you take it, he might kill you. Seeing Jellos' stunned expression, Leonia offered a conciliatory gesture. I'll give you a monthly salary, about 10 gold coins. As soon as the words left her mouth, she vanished using spatial magic, leaving him standing there dumbfounded. The oath, the one chance I had in my life, tricked away like that. He could already imagine the other mages laughing themselves silly if they ever found out. How does she even have Esquina's gold? That guy vanished 30 years ago. Suddenly, Hallett appeared. What were you doing meeting with Her Highness the Imperial Princess in secret? It would be a disaster if Her Highness were to be captivated by that face of yours. Jellos was speechless. Weren't you the ones who asked me to be her tutor? Seeing the resentment in Hallett's eyes, he decided to tease him. I find Her Highness quite fascinating, a very worthwhile subject of study. The next second, a frigid voice cut through the air. The Emperor had arrived. What do you mean by subject of study? The atmosphere instantly crackled with tension. Just as the two men unleashed their magic, ready to clash, Hallett's voice rang out. If you two don't withdraw your magic, there won't be a library left. Seeing that his words weren't having any effect, he played his trump card. I hear Her Highness is quite fond of this place. Destroying it would displease her. The Emperor sighed. I'll let you off the hook this time. If you dare harm Leonia, I will erase your magic tower from this world. Jellos, equally furious, seethed. If he hadn't promised Leonia to keep his sole possession a secret, he wouldn't be enduring such treatment. He spat out his own threat. Just you wait. You'll regret this someday. Meanwhile, the 8th prince raged impotently in his own home. He had just been thoroughly thrashed by Nykel and Abik. This is all because of my sister, he fumed. As he plotted his revenge, a letter arrived from the first prince. Could he be returning? I'd never imagined he himself was the source of all this chaos. The previous night, Leonia had been preparing for bed when an assassin suddenly appeared in her room. Having exhausted her magic while teasing Jellos earlier, she was defenseless. Terrified, she squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for the inevitable blow. But it never came. When she dared to open her eyes again, the assassin lay dead, and standing over the body was her maid. The next morning, Leonia eagerly questioned the maid about her identity. She learned that the maid had been a guard for her mother, Empress Apella, and her mother, it turned out, had been a princess of the Elan Duchy. But the Carol Kingdom had invaded their land. Forced into a peace treaty, the Elan Duchy had given their princess to the current emperor. Even now, the maid still harbored resentment over this. At first, the maid explained, the Carol Kingdom was no match for us. But then, a powerful mage appeared in their ranks. Single-handedly, he wiped out our entire army. As she spoke, she unconsciously tightened her grip on Leonia's small hand. If it weren't for that mage, our Elan Duchy would be far better off. She had no idea the mage she spoke of was Leonia herself. In her past life, as a witch, she had been the pillar of the Carol Kingdom. She had vehemently opposed the invasion of the Elan Duchy. But Lakis, the Carol King, had been obstinate, launching the war on his own. Unable to bear the thought of him dying on the battlefield, she had intervened. If she hadn't sided with Lakis, the Elan Duchy wouldn't have become a vassal state of the empire. Her mother wouldn't have been forced to marry the emperor, and she wouldn't have died in childbirth. Seeing Leonia's troubled expression, the maid assumed she was missing her mother. She quickly offered comfort, mentioning that for Leonia's 5th birthday, the Elan Duchy's emissaries would be visiting the empire. Including the Duke himself, she added, your mother's father-in-law. Leonia was stunned. That was the king of the very Elan Duchy she planned to destroy. If he discovered her true identity, she would be ruined. I shouldn't have revealed my magic, she thought, regretting her earlier actions. Meanwhile, the Emperor, Hallett, and Jellos had been impatiently awaiting Leonia's arrival. As she approached, the Emperor used his magic to pull the unsuspecting Leonia into his arms. You must be tired from walking, he said. I'll graciously hold you. You should thank me. Leonia was taken aback. He clearly wanted to hold her himself. Still, she played along, thanking him obediently. There was no helping her doting papa. Just then, the second prince, Abik, arrived. He was about to leave the palace and had come to bid farewell to his father and Leonia. The emperor, however, showed no reaction, seemingly indifferent. Leonia, unable to stand by, tugged on the emperor's collar. Papa, shouldn't you tell Abik to have a safe journey? Isn't that what you're supposed to say when someone leaves? The maid and Hallett held their breath. Such words would never normally pass the emperor's lips. Papa, Leonia pressed, what if you were going on a long journey? Wouldn't you want someone to wish you well? Finally, the emperor spoke. Have a safe journey. Abik was visibly surprised. Thank you, Leonia said to Abik, then, taking his small hand, added, and thank you, Leona. I promise I'll keep my promise to you. Abik hesitated, still holding her hand. Is there something else? Leonia asked. Nikel was bragging that you patted his head. Could you pat mine too? Leonia was speechless, unsure why such a thing was worth boasting about. Still, she obligingly reached out and gently patted Abik's head. The usually stoic Abik beamed like a child. He suddenly noticed the emperor's grip on him tighten. Don't do that again, the emperor murmured. I know you won your duel with Abik, the emperor said. Why didn't you kill him? Leonia replied, because he's my family. You can't kill family. Jellos, standing nearby, couldn't help but chuckle. His father, the emperor, had, after all, killed 37 of his own siblings to claim the throne. Leonia, realizing her gaffe, quickly corrected herself. I don't like killing, she declared. In truth, the emperor had once held similar sentiments. But he'd learned that his mercy only invited ruthless betrayal. He didn't want his daughter to experience that, nor did he want her labeled a cold-blooded monster like himself. He gently stroked Leonia's head. As long as I'm here, he reassured her, no one will harm you. They arrived at the reception room, where a priest awaited them. The emperor had arranged for the priest to bless Leonia. The priest, surprised by the emperor's devotion to such a young child, took Leonia's small hand and began channeling magic into her, intending to bless her while also probing her potential. To his astonishment, his magic began flowing uncontrollably into Leonia. At this rate, he would be drained. Leonia, overwhelmed by the influx of power, cried out, "What are you doing? It hurts," and yanked her hand back. The robust emperor was instantly furious. A blessing shouldn't hurt. The priest started to explain, then paused, a thought striking him. He cautiously channeled a small amount of magic into Leonia's hand again, confirming his suspicion. "Her Highness is like a bottomless pit," he declared. "It's impossible to fathom how much magic she can contain. Only a dragon could do this." "Her Highness may possess the body of a dragon," the priest continued, "born with unusual dark silver hair." Leonia had been considered a descendant of dragons. The emperor had summoned a priest specifically to bless her for this reason. Numerous nobles and ministers sent gifts, eager to curry favor. A maid suggested holding a birthday banquet for Leonia, believing it would enhance her prestige within the empire. Leonia had her own plans. Though favored by the emperor and her brother, she was still unfamiliar with the various noble factions. The banquet would be a perfect opportunity to assess them. The maid, Hayes, agreed. The first prince would soon return, and Leonia needed to solidify her position. Leonia, having heard rumors about the first prince, wondered, is he really that formidable? Just then, Nikel arrived, warning Leonia to stay away from the first prince. "He's a madman," Nikel insisted. "He shows no mercy to those weaker than himself." Nikel had faced the first prince and lost badly. Instead of killing him, the prince had imprisoned Nikel and subjected him to endless experiments, leaving him deeply traumatized. Leonia was instantly enraged. "How dare he bully one of my people?" she exclaimed, offering to train Nikel herself. "You must defeat him yourself," she declared. "Understood." They headed to the training grounds. Nikel hesitated. He was terrified of the first prince, who was also the son of the current pope, the emperor's uncle. "Is the pope more powerful than the emperor?" Leonia asked curiously. The question struck Nikel like a dagger to the heart. Seeing Leonia summon the magic circle, preparing to put him through rigorous training, he immediately chose to flee. "I have no desire to be a punching bag," he thought. Left with no other choice, Leonia began her own cultivation. Soon, she felt a strange energy stirring within her. Though she didn't know what it was, she could clearly sense its power. But just then, a bolt of black magic shot through the air, piercing her shoulder. A figure slowly approached. It was the 8th prince, Ide, accompanied by the first prince's assassin. This time, Ide was determined to avenge his previous humiliation. He immediately ordered the assassin to kill Leonia. Leonia watched as the black magic transformed into a sharp blade hurtling towards her. Her cultivation interrupted. She was suffering the backlash and had no room to resist. Meanwhile, the assassin began to gather an even stronger attack. Leonia knew that if this hit landed, she would surely die. Desperate, she disregarded the consequences and absorbed the strange energy within her. An incredibly terrifying magical power erupted from her, preparing for a final, desperate struggle. But for some unknown reason, the assassin and the 8th prince suddenly collapsed. Just as she was puzzling over this, an unfamiliar voice reached her. "Hello, Leonia. I've been wanting to meet you." Elsewhere, in the distant royal palace, the emperor abruptly stood. The first prince had returned. He also sensed Leonia's formidable aura. He immediately set off for the palace where she resided. Meanwhile, the first prince feigned concern, inquiring about Leonia's injuries. Seeing her obvious resistance towards him, he dropped the pretense. He ordered his subordinates to bring forth the defeated case and Nikel. "You weren't expecting them to save you, were you? The fact that you survived that assassin's attack for this long is quite unexpected. It proves your strength. You're worthy of me. So, when you're older, let's get married." Leonia was dumbfounded. "Are you even hearing yourself?" she thought. "Father once said that for the future of humanity, the strong must unite and create the next generation. Aren't you curious how powerful a child inheriting both our powers would be?" Her response was a magic-fueled rocket launched directly at him. She utterly loathed the first prince because his eyes were just like that man who experimented on children, just as repulsive. She unleashed a torrent of flame magic, instantly engulfing the first prince. But she had overlooked the presence of another, and her actions had thoroughly enraged the first prince. "If you are my enemy, then I must eliminate you quickly." A giant sword suddenly materialized in the air. "Farewell, intriguing Leonia." As the giant sword slowly descended toward her, Leonia couldn't help but think of everyone who had stood by her side. What a pity, she thought. It's going to end like this. Just at that critical moment, several bolts of lightning descended from the sky, intercepting the attack. Someone scooped Leonia into their arms. Yes, her father, the emperor, had finally arrived. Leonia could no longer contain herself. Tears streamed down her face. She flung herself into his embrace. "Why did you take so long? Those bad people attacked me while I was cultivating. I was so hurt, I almost woke up." The emperor gently wiped away her tears. "Leonia, you'll not die, because you are my daughter." Hearing these words, Leonia clung to him even tighter. Her father had always called her imperial princess. This was the first time he had called her daughter. "Father, you must punish him for me," she cried before falling unconscious. Upon hearing this, the first prince panicked. "This is a battle for the right of succession. According to the rules, even you cannot interfere. You should put Leonia down and let us continue our unfinished battle." The next second, the emperor summoned countless ice shards, sending them hurtling towards the first prince. "Insolent first prince, you are far too arrogant." An older brother trying to kill his younger siblings. A father wouldn't even blink. "But when they dare to lay a hand on my youngest daughter," the man, the emperor, surged to his feet. He swept Leonia into his arms, shielding her from further attack, and grievously wounded the first prince who had struck her. Even after all these days, the ice encasing the first prince hadn't melted. It was chilling to see how ruthless the emperor could be. The eighth prince eyed, seethed, blaming Leonia for everything. He swore she would pay. He was startled when Jealous suddenly appeared in his room. Jealous had dealt with the guards at the door without a sound. Seeing the menacing glint in Jealous's eyes, I'd hastily summoned a magic circle. Jealous merely smirked. "If you weren't the Pope's son, I would kill you all right here." Ide's eyes widened in surprise. Are you in the princess's side too?" "You guessed it," Jealous replied. "And if I don't beat you half to death, I'll have no face to show her. You were far too rough with Leonia." Meanwhile, Leonia's injuries were almost completely healed. She replayed the scene of her father coming to her rescue. In this life, she was finally no longer alone. Her thoughts drifted to her mother, a woman she had never known. What kind of person was she? Just then, Jealous entered her room. "Long time no see, Leonia." Leonia, however, remained coldly indifferent, unwilling to even acknowledge him. She had nearly been beaten to death, and her supposed teacher had been nowhere to be found. Sensing her displeasure, Jealous quickly added, "Before coming here, I already gave the first prince a good lesson." Leonia's expression instantly transformed. "You did well," she said, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "But when I'm stronger, I'll deal with him myself." "By the way," she asked, tilting her head, "why does the first prince have such a strong animosity towards me?" "That lunatic, he proposed to me," Leonia admitted, "and I rejected him." Jealous's face darkened. "If I had known that," he growled, "I wouldn't have left him alive, even if it meant facing the Pope's wrath." "There's not a single sane person in this palace," he muttered, then suggested, "Come with me, Leonia. Let's leave this place." Leonia's response stopped him in his tracks. "But you're a lunatic too," she pointed out, "and my goal is to become emperor. I can't leave here." Jealous, still worried, offered to train her in 2 days. He knew Leonia wouldn't tolerate being bullied. "After your training," he promised, "you can deal with anyone who dares to cross you." Once Jealous was gone, Leonia sought out Hayes, her maid. She wanted to know if her mother had left anything behind. Learning that her mother's belongings were kept in the Dandelion Palace, Leonia and Hayes slipped out under the cover of night. A protective barrier, accessible only to those with royal blood, blocked the palace entrance. Leonia instructed Hayes to wait outside. She entered the palace alone, determined to uncover the truth. The desolate silence of the palace weighed heavily on her. A wave of sadness washed over Leonia. If her mother were still alive, she would surely hate the person who now inhabited her daughter's body. Little did she know, she was about to find some answers. The moment she stepped inside, a journal began to flip open on its own, as if guided by an unseen hand. It was her mother's diary, chronicling her pregnancy and Leonia's birth. March 2nd, 2024. "I can't believe I'm going to be a mother. It's incredible." In the following entries, her mother's anticipation and love for her unborn child shone through. Sometime into the pregnancy, agonizing pain began to rack her body. Tormented daily, she even considered ending the pregnancy. But she persevered, slowly adapting to the constant pain. The emperor often remarked that the child was as active as a lion. Inspired by this, she chose a name for her child, Leonia. Reading this, Leonia realized her name hadn't been chosen on a whim. It had been decided long ago. Had something happened between then and her birth? The diary entries continued, leading up to August 21st. "Excruciating pain, like my body is being torn apart. I think I'm losing consciousness." A healer was called, and the cause of the pain became clear. The child had already died in the womb. As a mage, she could sense that the child had no soul. He was consumed by guilt. He believed that his earlier desire to give up the child had wounded her heart. If only he had embraced the pregnancy as a blessing from the start, perhaps she would have lived. Reading this, a pang of sorrow pierced Leonia's heart. But as she turned to the next page of the diary, she found a startling entry. Her mother had found a way to save the child. Just then, a letter slipped from between the pages. To Leonia's astonishment, the letter held the answers to all the questions that haunted her. She learned that she owed her existence to her mother's sacrifice. Her mother had used dark magic, at the cost of her own life, to place a soul within this body. Though the letter didn't reveal the soul's origin, the fact that it had answered her mother's call suggested a profound loneliness, a heart burdened by pain and regret. Her mother didn't believe that this soul had stolen her daughter's body. On the contrary, she believed it had granted her daughter a new life. From the moment you were born, you were Leonia, my daughter. So please, think of me as your mother. I hope you will always live a happy life. In the next life, I hope you will be my daughter again. Though I wasn't a good mother in this life, I'm sorry. Reading this, Leonia could no longer contain her emotions. She was the one who should be apologizing. Why would her mother waste her life for a witch like her? She gently placed her hand on her mother's portrait. In her past life, she had known only endless manipulation and betrayal. But in this life, she felt the genuine concern her brothers often expressed, and the adoration of her father. These were things she had never experienced before. Mother, I'm very happy now. You don't have to worry. The girl had finally, across the river of time, met her mother. Her mother had known all along that she was reborn. Her mother felt only guilt and remorse, not anger that she had taken over her daughter's body. Instead, she saw it as giving her daughter a new life. She hoped Leonia would find happiness in this world. At the end of the letter, her mother mentioned a gift she had left for her, a garment sewn with her own hands. But when Leonia opened the package, she found a red cloak. Still, if it was from her mother, it must have a special meaning. Meanwhile, Case had been waiting outside for a long time. Fearing for Leonia's safety, he decided to go in and check on her. But he was repelled by a powerful protective barrier. Fortunately, Leonia emerged just then. Seeing Case injured, she gently blew on the bump on his head. "Are you all right?" Case was too touched to even register the pain. As they prepared to leave, the Emperor arrived. He was furious that they had trespassed into the forbidden area. Leonia's mother, after all, had been a renowned puppeteer, and the room could be riddled with traps. He was worried they might have encountered something dangerous. He decided to give Leonia a small punishment, a lesson. But clever Leonia saw right through him. She immediately stepped forward and stopped the Emperor as he turned to leave. "Papa, you're worried about me, aren't you? That's why you're so angry. But I only came here to see Mother." She twirled around. "See, Papa, I'm perfectly fine, and my previous injuries have already healed." The Emperor coughed, his usual imposing demeanor crumbling in the face of his daughter. "Don't run off like that again. I don't want you getting ambushed like last time." The mention of the incident sparked Leonia's anger. She declared her determination to defeat the first prince and become the emperor herself. She feared that if she failed, the first prince would force her into marriage. The emperor's face darkened, and a chilling aura emanated from him. "Are you saying the first prince spoke to you about marriage? He said he wanted to have children with me. He said our children would be incredibly powerful." The moment she finished speaking, Case raced towards the first prince's quarters. The emperor was now truly enraged. His icy fury was so intense that frost began to form on the eaves. It wasn't until he saw Leonia shivering from the cold that his anger subsided slightly. He finally began to withdraw his magic, striving to regain his composure. "Leonia," he addressed her, "you said you wanted to be emperor, didn't you?" Leonia didn't attempt to hide her ambition. "That's right. I want to be emperor, and I want to conquer the entire continent. But I'm too weak right now. I wish I could get stronger faster." The emperor found himself unable to resist Leonia's earnest desire. He mused, "An emperor? That does sound rather interesting. Very well, I'll lend you a hand. Come with me. I'll take you somewhere interesting." But just as he turned, Leonia called out to him. Leonia smiled and held out her arms. The emperor, understanding her unspoken request, scooped her up into a warm embrace. "Honestly, what am I going to do with you?" Meanwhile, Case was on his way to the first prince's palace, his fury simmering. How could he say such things to a 3-year-old? I won't let him live. Along the way, he encountered Hayes. He considered whether or not to enlist his help. He recounted the events to Hayes, successfully igniting his indignation. That madman, how could he? Unlike Case, However, Hayes possessed a degree of caution. He knew the first prince's palace was heavily guarded. Going there, just the two of them would be suicide. Even if they survived, they'd be gravely injured. But Her Highness just soothed my injuries. At these words, Hayes's mind filled with the image of Leonia gently blowing on his wounds. What are you standing around for? Let's go. We're going to flatten that first prince. And make sure you keep an eye on me. I'm going to try to get injured as much as possible. You have to carry me back. Elsewhere, the emperor and Leonia arrived before a massive palace. This was built by a brilliant alchemist from the previous royal generation. It houses a vast collection of precious treasures. Leonia was speechless at the sight. "Papa, are all of these for me?" she asked, but the emperor replied that she could only choose 3. "Only 3 treasures? Papa, you're so stingy." Despite her complaint, she excitedly began to browse the treasures. 3 items were still a significant boon. First, she chose a bracelet that could deflect holy magic for Case. This way, he won't lose to the first prince's men again. Next, she selected a ring that allowed for spatial displacement. Then I can return to my old hideout from my past life. There are quite a few good things there. The emperor, observing her choices, couldn't help but marvel at her discerning eye at such a young age. He assumed that Leonia was choosing treasures to counter the first prince, and expected her third choice to be something overtly powerful. To his surprise, however, Leonia chose an unremarkable necklace. "Why did you choose that?" he asked. "Are you curious, Papa? I'm not telling you. You're the only one in the entire empire who dares to speak to me like that." Back at her own palace, Leonia collapsed on her bed. Another tiring day. She had just settled down to rest when a knock echoed from outside. It was Hayes, covered in injuries, the fruits of his labor. "Your Highness, please soothe my wounds. I'm dying." But before Leonia could react, Case arrived and stepped on him. "Your Highness, I'll take care of him. You should rest. I've finally met him," Leonia thought, referring to her nemesis, the first prince. Hayes, desperate for Leonia to tend to his injuries, had offered himself up to the first prince's wrath. However, before he could bask in the attention he craved, Case dragged him away. While the incident seemed like a farce, Leonia filed it away in her memory. She would settle the score with the first prince later. The next morning, Leonia returned her attention to her notebook. In her past life, she had never heard her mother's name. As the emperor's consort, her mother should have been well known. She decided to examine her mother's diary, hoping to find an explanation. To her surprise, the diary was protected by a spell that prevented it from being read. To continue watching, she needed to raise her internal magic power to level 6. Leonia couldn't understand why her mother had imposed this condition. Was it out of concern for her safety? Just then, a swirl of purple magic materialized beside Leonia. She knew Jelos had arrived, and his purpose here was to take Leonia for special training. Up until now, Leonia had relied on her prodigious raw magic to cast spells without any formal magical education. And Jelos? He was the archmage who had once devastated half the continent. Under his tutelage, she was sure to become even more powerful. Meanwhile, the emperor brooded over the events of recent days. Every time Leonia was even slightly imperiled, a fierce anxiety gripped him. He indulged her every whim, no matter how unreasonable. He had even interfered in the succession struggle for her sake. The emperor couldn't fathom why he was acting so out of character. At that moment, Hyret entered, pouring out a litany of complaints against the first prince and expressing sympathy for Leonia's plight. Such a small child, how could she possibly stand against that madman? Hyret pleaded with the emperor to intervene, but he feigned indifference, declaring he would no longer involve himself in the fight for the throne. But then a servant arrived with news. Leonia and the Tower Master had gone to the training grounds. The emperor could contain himself no longer. He grabbed Hyret and hurried towards the training grounds. The sturdy Hyret couldn't help but sigh. What a duplicitous man. Meanwhile, Jelos was channeling magic into Leonia, hoping to awaken the power within her. But the next moment, Leonia felt a pang of pain, similar to what she had experienced during the blessing. Jelos, assuming it was due to Leonia feeling insecure, suggested they move to a different location for the training, perhaps his room. Those words jolted Leonia. Summoning a teleportation circle, she vanished. She reappeared before a cave, her lair from her past life. This place offered her the greatest sense of security and comfort. Here, her mind could be completely at ease, allowing her to focus on cultivating her magic. But she had barely begun when, a figure emerged behind her. It was Lacus. "Little one, are you lost?" he asked. Leonia remained silent, a torrent of thoughts flooding her mind. Lacus, thinking she was frightened, reached out to pick her up. Suddenly, a surge of magic intercepted him. Jelos had arrived. He immediately shielded Leonia, placing himself between her and Lacus. He knew the man before him was no friend. "Your Highness, we've finally found you," Jelos said. "If you don't return, the Emperor is going to declare war on the magic tower." He scooped Leonia into his arms. Lacus, upon hearing this, finally understood Leonia's identity. If the Emperor valued this child so highly, he couldn't let her leave easily. Leonia, too, had come to her senses. Thoughts of revenge surged within her. She wasn't Lacus's match yet, but she could still taunt him. Knowing Lacus's vanity, she began to attack his appearance, declaring Jelos to be 1,000 times more handsome. As expected, Lacus bristled, but he couldn't lower himself to argue with the child. Beside him, Jelos flushed crimson, inwardly ecstatic. "If she keeps praising me, I won't be able to control myself," he thought. "We need to leave." He activated a teleportation spell, whisking Leonia away to a grassy plain. From Leonia's behavior, it was clear there was some history between her and Lacus. He also knew her compliments were meant as a dig at Lacus. But Leonia wouldn't reveal the nature of their relationship easily. "This is so frustrating," Jelos thought. "The first time she shows any affection towards me, it's because of that guy. I should have punched him before we left." Lacus, too, was unsettled. It was the first time anyone had called him ugly. For some reason, that little girl felt strangely familiar. And why was the Imperial Princess in that place? It seemed he needed to make a trip to the Empire. The girl had vanished without a trace for a week, reducing the normally composed Emperor to a frantic mess. He hadn't slept for 7 days and nights. Nearby, Hayes couldn't help but scoff. The Emperor had pretended indifference at first, but now look at him. Meanwhile, completely oblivious, Leonia was still lost in her training. It was Jelos who finally spoke up, reminding her, "You need to return to the Imperial Palace. You've been gone for a week." Leonia stared blankly. Had it really been that long? She'd only trained for a bit, hadn't she? "I need to come up with an excuse, or I'm going to be in trouble," she thought. Jelos, however, wouldn't be delayed. "Do you know what the Emperor has put me through these past few days?" His words sparked an idea. "What if I blame it all on you?" Leonia offered. Jelos gave her a flat look. "If you want me dead, just say so. There's no need to be so roundabout." Resigned, Jelos helped her concoct a story. She'd accidentally fallen into the Moisseau forest, a place where one's presence couldn't be detected. Leonia thought it was a brilliant plan. "Then let's head back to the palace." On their way, she suddenly remembered something. "Jelos, you have dealings with the Kingdom of Corel, don't you?" She pressed him for answers. Seeing his reluctance, Leonia pulled a magical necklace from her pocket. "This is especially for you," she offered. Even the stoic Jelos found it hard to refuse, but he countered with a condition. He wanted Leonia to share a secret in exchange. He then confessed that he once had a younger brother, a prodigious talent, a once-in-a-century genius. Even the master of the magic tower had personally invited his brother to join. Jelos, however, had failed the magic exam twice. As the gap between them widened, a seed of jealousy and self-doubt took root in his heart. He eventually abandoned his brother, embarking on a solitary journey of training. After 50 years, he finally achieved the level of power he'd always dreamed of. Now, he could finally stand before his brother as an equal, a brother he could be proud of. To prove his strength, he took his brother to challenge the Dragonbone. Predictably, tragedy struck. Faced with overwhelming power, they were helpless. His brother, a victim of Jelos's arrogance and pride, never made it out of that cave. It was his fault. His brother had paid the ultimate price. Leonia's voice suddenly broke through his reverie. "You're a genius too. There's no need to be jealous of others. Besides, the dead can't be resurrected. Even the king of Corel can't do that." Jelos stumbled back, taken aback by her unexpected comfort. Normally, he would have thought she'd lost her mind. He quickly regained his composure, feigning indifference. "Now it's your turn. What's your relationship with the king of Corel?" Leonia's fists clenched. "He's someone I have to kill, no matter what." "Must you?" Jelos asked. Leonia didn't answer. The answer was obvious. "You have no idea what I've been through. He has to die." Before Jelos could respond, Hayes and Case arrived. "Your Highness, we've finally found you." They didn't notice Jelos standing behind them. tears welling in his eyes. Perhaps, by then, we will be enemies. In the blink of an eye, Leonia was back in the imperial palace. A heavy silence hung in the air, the atmosphere thick with tension. Leonia, where have you been these past few days? Leonia immediately launched into a saccharine plea. Father, I missed you so much. I used the wrong long-distance teleportation magic and accidentally fell into the Moasog forest. I barely managed to escape. I'm so sorry, Father. I made you worry. The Emperor lifted her by the scruff of her neck. A child your age escaping the Moasog forest? 不愧是他所看中的女儿. After checking her for injuries, he abruptly dropped her to the floor. You're grounded for a week. Let's see if you dare run off again. Leonia, though she felt the punishment was excessive, didn't dare protest. The Emperor was still furious. After she left, he immediately summoned the Empire's foremost mage. Seal the entire imperial palace with a barrier, the Emperor commanded. Forbid anyone from using teleportation magic. The court mage, upon hearing this, hastily reminded him, Your Majesty, this action could very well bankrupt the treasury. But the Emperor didn't care. Just do it. If anything happens to the princess again, I'll have you, old man, slaughtered and fed to the pigs. Meanwhile, Leonia was utterly bored. Stuck inside for a week. What to do? She mused. Just then, Case entered carrying a gift box. It's a gift from the second prince, Albec, Case explained. There's a letter too. It turned out that Albec, though in the kingdom of Corel, had been keeping a close eye on Leonia. Upon learning of Leonia's disappearance, he had wanted to rush back immediately. However, he had promised Leonia he would investigate matters in Corel for her. His letter explained that he had successfully infiltrated a mercenary group in Corel and vowed not to disappoint Leonia's expectations. Having read the letter, Leonia was deeply touched. Let's see what this gift is, she thought. Perhaps it's something wonderful. But when she opened the box, she discovered it contained the head of the mercenary group's leader. The young princess never imagined that the gift her brother had sent from so far away would be a severed head. It dawned on her. Her brother was utterly insane. He had a penchant for collecting human body parts. The moment Leonia opened the gift, she was understandably horrified. Even after a full night, she hadn't recovered from the shock. Just then, Nikel arrived, cheerful as ever, wanting to play with Leonia. But Leonia noticed the bruises on his face. Were you beaten? She asked, her voice sharp with concern. Nikel quickly lied, claiming he'd accidentally hurt himself while practicing magic. He didn't let on that the true culprit behind his injuries was the first prince. During Leonia's disappearance, the first prince had sought out Nikel, knowing of his friendship with the princess. He'd harbored murderous intent. Don't worry, the first prince had sneered. Albec will join you soon. And as for Leonia, the one you care so much about, I'll save her for last. Thankfully, the sixth princess, Sherry, had intervened and Nikel had escaped with his life. Leonia's hand reached out, interrupting his thoughts. A gentle magic enveloped her small hand as she slowly healed his wounds. Nikel was overcome with gratitude. I'm going to tell Hyric about this, he exclaimed. I'll brag about it. Leonia froze. I'd better close the door, she thought, or I'll never hear the end of it. But it wasn't long before a bald man arrived. He was 80, the fourth sage of the Ivory Tower, sent to tutor Leonia. 80 was thoroughly unenthusiastic. What could a 3-year-old possibly understand about books? He grumbled internally. He decided to give Leonia a taste of his intellectual prowess. Unbeknownst to him, Leonia had the same thought in mind. She intended to get rid of this bothersome tutor. She pulled several books from her bag. I hear Her Highness enjoys reading, 80 said, a smug smile playing on his lips. So let me test you. He never expected Leonia to recite the entire contents of each book, word for word, after merely glancing at the titles. The bald sage was so astonished. He felt as though his non-existent hair was falling out. From history to physics and then to mathematics, Leonia answered every question flawlessly. 80 began to question his own sanity. How could a 3-year-old know so much? He wondered. She must have been studying since she was in the womb. Leonia, growing tired of the interrogation, thought, sending someone like this to teach me, how infuriating. 80's eyes widened. He slammed a book down on the table, his face filled with renewed confidence. If you can read this, he declared, I will never bother you again. And, he added, I'll wash my head upside down starting tomorrow. Leonia studied the book carefully. She noticed the cover appeared to be made of human skin. The book, she surmised, most likely originated from the demon realm. The demonic language hadn't been fully deciphered yet. No wonder 80 was so confident. But he didn't know Leonia was a witch in her past life. This, for her, was child's play. Shall we read something practical? She asked, a sly smile playing on her lips. 80, still fuming, was about to retort, "If you can read this book by tomorrow, I'll give you 10,000 gold coins." With that wager made, Leonia promptly arrived at the library, putting on a show of studious contemplation to avoid suspicion. Unexpectedly, she encountered Jellos there. He, too, was surprised, having never imagined the imperial princess would have a fondness for books. Leonia recounted the details of her bet with the bald man. Jellos immediately recognized the book as originating from the demon realm. "That guy's outrageous. Need me to rough him up a bit?" he offered. Leonia, unfazed, replied, "I'm a little genius, you know. How could I possibly not understand this book?" Jellos, taken aback, stood stunned for a long moment. He had spent years immersed in the library, dedicated to deciphering the demonic script. Suddenly, comprehension dawning, he bowed deeply to Leonia, imploring her to teach him the language of the demon realm. Leonia refused without hesitation. She knew Jellos longed to save his brother, but the dead could not be resurrected. It was an immutable truth. Jellos fell silent, his usual jovial demeanor vanishing. "You haven't experienced what I have," he said, his voice heavy with grief. "You can't just say things like that. You don't understand my pain." Leonia lashed out, kicking him sharply. "And how much do you know about me?" she retorted. "Since you know about the soul within me, you should know I've experienced far more than this. Do you think I've lived this long without wanting to bring someone back? But I wouldn't make the choices you have, nor do I want to understand them." The two parted on bad terms. Although Leonia had won her bet with the bald man, she felt no joy. She then made a request of the bald man to have the Grand Sage become her tutor. Rumor held that the Grand Sage's knowledge was beyond compare. She was determined to ask the Grand Sage, on Jellos' behalf, whether or not the dead could truly be revived. Meanwhile, the first prince had once again found Nykel. "You escaped last time by sheer luck. This time will be different." As he spoke, he summoned several white light swords that hurtled towards Nykel. At the very last moment, Leonia arrived. "You're dead," she declared, finally ready to intervene and save Nykel from imminent danger. Leonia finally decided to confront the first prince. A fireball, summoned by Leonia, descended from the sky, successfully separating the two combatants. Fury etched on her face, Leonia seethed. "So you're the reason Nykel was hurt." With that, she unleashed her magic, hurling massive boulders at the first prince. However, such magic was trivial to the first prince. With a casual flick of his sword, he effortlessly deflected the incoming barrage. "Leonia, you've grown stronger in just a few days." Though Leonia excelled at offensive magic, the battlefield was now shrouded in smoke, obscuring the first prince's location. Before Leonia could react, he used the smoke as cover, advancing with his sword until he stood directly before her. "You can't dodge my sword at this range." But he underestimated Leonia. She had a contingency, the necklace imbued with spatial magic. In an instant, a spatial magic circle appeared behind the first prince. From within the circle surged a fireball, conjured by Leonia. "I believe those were your words," Leonia said coolly. "You can't dodge this at this range." As predicted, the fireball sent the first prince flying 300 meters. Just as Leonia prepared to finish him off, the first prince's sword came hurtling towards her. However, Case had been waiting. Empowered by the treasure Leonia had given him, Case faced the sword with absolute confidence. He summoned a colossal lava beast, wreathed in flames. With a single, casual blow, the lava beast sent the first prince's sword crashing to the ground, leaving it unable to rise. The emperor had witnessed the entire battle, finally understanding why Leonia had chosen the necklace. "That little one is truly remarkable," he mused. "It seems I needn't worry about her anymore." The emperor's unconscious smile was caught by the ever-perceptive Hyret. "So, your majesty is also pleased with the imperial princess?" A faint blush colored the emperor's cheeks. He cleared his throat. "Did I express pleasure?" The battle concluded with Leonia's victory. "Her Imperial Highness has won." How impressive. The emperor, outwardly impassive, feigned nonchalance. There's no need for such a fuss. Inwardly, however, he was overjoyed. Just then, Hayes handed the emperor a letter, explaining it was from the king of Corel. The emperor barely glanced at it before setting it alight. "The audacity to write to me," he scoffed. Meanwhile, The first prince's face was ashen. In the War of Succession, losers met only one fate. "Just kill me," he pleaded. Leonia, seemingly accustomed to such scenes, shrugged. "I just wanted to beat you up, not kill you." She extended a chubby hand. "If you don't want another thrashing, become my subordinate." The first prince, surprised by the offer, stared at her. He staggered to his feet. "Are you sure you want someone as dangerous as me by your side?" Leonia, seemingly oblivious to his question, continued. "Nichol is number 0. Albec is number 1. So you." A smile flickered across the first prince's lips. "Interesting," he murmured, grasping Leonia's small hand. "I'll be number 100 then. I'll gather 97 more subordinates for you." 2.5 days passed. Nichol awoke with a start, his injuries almost completely healed. Leonia had been caring for him. "I told you to tell me if anything happened. Why didn't you say anything about being hurt?" she scolded. Nichol felt ashamed. Who runs to their little sister after getting beaten up? Leonia, however, insisted they were family and should help each other. "Besides," she added, "it's a master's duty to protect their subordinates." Tears welled in Nichol's eyes as he hugged her tightly. "Thank you, Leonia." Leonia wasn't sure why she'd said those words. Something felt strange, a stirring within her. The concept of family was still hazy. Just then, Hayes burst in, showering Leonia with effusive praise. The Emperor followed close behind, scooping Leonia into his arms. Words of praise formed on his lips, but he seemed to swallow them back. Instead, he cautioned her to be careful. News of her victory over the first prince had spread. The nobles who had supported him might now flock to her. Currently, Leonia had the least influence among the imperial siblings. She was vulnerable to manipulation. Unfazed, Leonia declared she had Hayes' case. The first prince, Rodri, now her subordinate, along with Albec and Nichol. Even the bald tutor who had instructed her had pledged his allegiance. The emperor was surprised. That arrogant man? Serving Leonia? Perhaps his daughter had truly grown. Later that evening, as they returned to the palace, Case, seizing a moment of privacy, posed a question. "Your Highness," he began, "is your soul different from others?" Leonia's heart lurched. Had Case discovered her secret? The question jolted her awake. "Your Highness," Case repeated, "is your soul different from others?" He had overheard her argument with Jellos in the library. Case's question wasn't malicious. As a necromancer, he was acutely sensitive to souls. He had always sensed Leonia's uniqueness. "Forgive me, Your Highness," he said. "I eavesdropped on your conversation." Tears pricked Leonia's eyes. She was the one who should apologize. Case, the maid spirit, Nichol. They were all family, and families shouldn't have secrets. Yet, she pleaded with Case not to reveal her true nature. Fear gnawed at her. What if they rejected her? In this life, she had finally found love and acceptance. She couldn't bear to lose it again. Hearing this, Case gently stroked Leonia's head. "You must have been through so much. It's all right now. You've told me. Please believe me. I will always be on your side. Everyone will love you." Case's words deeply moved Leonia. "But that doesn't erase the fear in my bones. Even if I said I was a witch, would you still be on my side?" Case's answer was affirmative. To him, Leonia was Leonia, the person he had to protect no matter what. Hearing this, Leonia finally opened her heart to Case and began to tell him about her past. From wandering the streets alone, to being tricked into becoming an experimental subject, then becoming the only witch, then meeting Lacus, being ruthlessly betrayed and killed by him. This entire life, she had either lived alone or been used and betrayed. It wasn't until she came to this world and met everyone that Leonia began to try and trust others again. Saying this, she suddenly hugged Case tightly. "You all have shown me what family feels like. I'm truly happy now." Case was deeply touched by Leonia's words. Although he was not good with words of comfort, he had already sworn in his heart to kill the one who had hurt Leonia so deeply. Then, with a serious expression, he promised Leonia that he would never tell anyone. But then he thought about something. That Jellos fellow. Why should he get to hoard the Imperial Princess's secrets all to himself? I'll have to fight him sometime. Leonia was bewildered. How do we get to talking about him? After this, Leonia seemed much happier. Getting everything off her chest had clearly made her feel much lighter. Case, too, wore a smile every day. He was now one of the few who knew the Imperial Princess's secret. But Leonia was currently the most dazzling presence in the Imperial Palace. Countless people came to visit her every day, tiring her out. Just then, the 6th princess, Sherry, came to call. But as soon as she entered, Case held a dagger to her throat. He didn't know who she was. Sherry, however, calmly pushed the dagger away. Is your sword that impressive? She then revealed her identity, stating she had come specifically to see Leonia. Leonia, however, said she was busy. You need to make an appointment. And today's appointments are almost all filled by those guys. But what Leonia didn't expect was that Sherry would publicly feign helplessness, refusing to leave. Aren't you older than me? Why are you acting like a child? Sherry didn't seem to care. I heard you're quite impressive. You not only saved Nicol, but also defeated the first prince. This immediately struck a chord with Leonia. Of course, I'm the best. Hearing this, Sherry gave a sly smile. I hope that's true. After a busy day, Leonia collapsed on her bed, exhausted. She intended to get some proper rest. Just then, a maid came over and warned Leonia to be careful of the sixth princess, Sherry, because she's very likely to be in league with the eighth prince, ID. And there are many other princes who haven't met Leonia yet. You're in the spotlight now. You should always be on your guard. Leonia pondered for a moment and agreed. She said she would be careful. The maid was touched. It was rare for Leonia to heed her advice. So she continued to advise Leonia, you mustn't get hurt. You must grow up happily. We will always protect you and always love you. A brilliant sage had taken a 3-year-old girl as his teacher. For this reason, he squatted in front of Leonia's door every day, just begging for Leonia to give him a lesson. Some nobles didn't understand this. A 3-year-old child was making the fourth sage wait for her. But this only earned them the bald man's wrath. In his heart, Leonia was the greatest scholar and his teacher. If it weren't for Leonia being the heir to the throne, he would have already invited her to the ivory tower. So, you ignorant brats, if you dare speak ill of my teacher again, don't blame me for being impolite. Meanwhile, Leonia was strolling around the imperial palace. They happened to run into the emperor and his entourage. His eyes immediately fell upon Giros, standing off to the side. Why haven't you come to see me these past few days? Giros froze, surprised that Leonia had been waiting for him. The next moment, Leonia grabbed his ear. Let's talk. Alone. The powerfully built emperor clenched his fists. Giros had whisked her away without even a greeting to him. From this day forward, the Tower Master is forbidden from entering the imperial palace. In the blink of an eye, Leonia and Giros arrived at the library. Leonia spoke hesitantly. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have lost my temper with you that day. Giros felt a pang of guilt. He hadn't understood Leonia's past and shouldn't have said those things. He was old enough to know better. A young girl was apologizing to him. He truly was, as always, a fool. Just as Giros was about to apologize, Leonia interrupted him. Case found out about my soul. He overheard our conversation in the library. Giros' head buzzed at her words. It was all his fault. Because of him, their secret was no longer just between the two of them. As soon as he finished that thought, Leonia yanked his hair. Can't you just be normal for once? I'm sorry, I was wrong. I really did speak out of turn that day. Leonia's heart warmed at his words. Will you break ties with Lacus? Giros refused. He couldn't simply abandon his younger brother. Leonia, upon hearing his answer, didn't fly into a rage as she had before. Instead, she warned him to be careful. Lacus was far more dangerous than he realized. Giros stared blankly for a moment. Not wanting to worry her, he feigned nonchalance. I'm a Tower Master, you know. Of course I'll take precautions. When Leonia returned to her palace, she found a queue already formed, everyone wanting to see her. The imperial princess was exhausted and desperately wanted to rest. However, just as the others began to argue over who would get to spend time with her, the first prince, Rodri, opened the door and walked in. The room fell silent. I need to speak with Leonia. You'd all best disappear quickly. Sherry and Nicol started to protest, but Rodri began to cast a spell. Since you won't leave, I'll help you. Leonia glared at him. Are you going to start a fight in my palace? Suddenly, the magic in Rodri's hand transformed into a flower. Of course not. I wouldn't be so rude. I just wanted to give you this. As Leonia stared, dumbfounded, his expression turned icy again. Are you still here? Knowing the first prince's terrifying power, they wisely took their leave. Rodri's purpose, as always, was to secure a marriage agreement with Leonia. Though he was now her subordinate, his heart hadn't changed. In fact, after being defeated by her, his resolve to marry her had only strengthened. Leonia was speechless. This guy and Giros would probably get along great. I won't marry you. I'm going to be emperor. Rodri wasn't discouraged by her rejection. There was still plenty of time. As he left, he warned her to be wary of the sixth princess, Sherry. She wasn't as innocent as she appeared. Leonia was puzzled. Why was everyone telling her to be careful of Sherry? Was she really that dangerous? Just then, a maid rushed in. "Your Imperial Highness, have you been in the palace this whole time?" After Leonia confirmed that she had, the maid looked utterly confused. "Then who was just in the garden?" Case, upon seeing Leonia, broke out in a cold sweat. "Your Imperial Highness, weren't you just having dinner with me in the dining hall? Why would you have been in the palace the whole time? Something's wrong. Something's terribly wrong." Leonia's personality has completely changed overnight. She had not only thrown away the flowers Nicole had carefully prepared, but she had also slapped the maid without a word of explanation. It turned out that while Leonia and the others were discussing the strange occurrences of the past few days inside the palace, the nobles outside had seen her in the garden. The nobles had intended to flatter and win over Leonia, but when they approached with a simple greeting, she burst into tears and fled in a frantic panic. The nobles were dumbfounded. Hadn't they heard the imperial princess was formidable? She was acting like a 3-year-old. They immediately decided to report the incident to the 4th imperial consort, certain he would be delighted by the news. Hayes was also taken aback by the news. The imperial princess crying? He hurried to find Leonia, wanting to confirm the truth of the garden incident. "If those nobles were bullying you," he declared, "I'll pay each of them a visit right now." But Leonia insisted she had been in her room all day and hadn't stepped foot outside. Could she have seen a ghost? The robust Hayes, playing along, wailed dramatically. As he left, however, he reminded Leonia to inform him of anything unusual. After Hayes's departure, Leonia began to reflect on the strange events of the past few days, a glimmer of understanding dawning in her mind. Meanwhile, Nicole had gathered a bouquet of fresh flowers, picked during his early morning stroll, to present to Leonia. He was sure his bunny would love them. But just as he emerged from the palace, he witnessed a scene that shocked him to his core. Leonia was berating a servant girl, slapping her repeatedly. Then, with an air of impatience, she turned towards Nicole. "Are those flowers for me?" she demanded. Before Nicole could answer, she flung the flowers to the ground, grinding them under her heel. "Only an idiot would like these things," she sneered. "Stay away from me," she hissed, "and don't bother me again." Hayes was next in line for her wrath. Without a word, she summoned a bolt of fire and launched it directly at him. "I really hate you," she spat. "I could list 100 reasons why." Hayes, a whirlwind of emotions, stood frozen, speechless. Leonia then sought out the servant girl again. To the girl's usual kind inquiries, Leonia now retorted, "Who do you think you are? How dare you question me? You're just a nanny. You've got a lot of nerve." She glared at the servant's stunned expression. Meanwhile, in a hidden chamber, Sherry, the 6th imperial princess, smiled with satisfaction. "Yes," she murmured, "drive them all away. Then I can absorb your power and finally kill you." But to Sherry's surprise, the servant girl suddenly grabbed Leonia's wrist. "You're not the imperial princess," she exclaimed. "Who are you?" Leonia, her facade crumbling, panicked and wrenched herself free. Before the servant could react, Leonia fled. The servant then began a frantic search through the palace for the real Leonia. Finally, she found Leonia in the library with her companions. Before the servant could speak, Leonia asked, "Lynn, did I do something to you today?" The real Leonia had already learned of the events. As the servant recounted what had transpired, the atmosphere in the library turned icy. "She dared to touch my family," Leonia seethed. "Wait here. I have something to attend to." Sherry, still puzzling over how the servant had discovered the truth, was startled by a stone striking the back of her head. She whirled around to find Leonia standing in her room, her expression furious. "I wasn't going to bother with you," Leonia stated coldly, "but you shouldn't have touched my people." As the words left her lips, she summoned a volley of magical orbs, launching them at Sherry. An explosion rocked the room. Sherry, battered and bruised, feigned innocence. "Why are you doing this to me?" she whimpered. "You're making me a laughingstock." "I don't care," Leonia replied icily, "but you shouldn't provoke my people. They're my family. Only I can bully them." Sherry dropped the pretense. "You said you wanted to be emperor," she hissed. "That's a lonely path. One day, they'll become a burden. What will you do if someone threatens their lives, demands you trade yours for theirs?" Leonia froze. Sherry's question, a question she'd never considered, hung heavy in the air. An answer, however, quickly formed in her mind. She needed to become stronger, strong enough to prevent such a tragedy from ever happening. You ask such a question because you're weak. You can't protect those you care about. Tears welled in Sherry's eyes. The words struck a nerve, her face hardening in an instant. A black magic circle materialized, binding Leonia. It was powerful magic, taught to Sherry by her mother, a spell she believed Leonia couldn't break. Leonia knew the truth. Breaking free required her full strength, but unleashing that power would likely destroy the palace, and Sherry along with it. Just as the darkness threatened to consume Leonia, a fierce wind ripped through the room. Large hands grasped her, pulling her from the spell's embrace. Giros had arrived. "Your Highness," he said, relief evident in his voice. "I kept my promise. I made it in time." He repeated the last phrase, a reassurance to himself as much as to her. He'd saved Leonia from certain death. This time, he added, "I kept my promise. You weren't hurt." His reward was a sharp chop to the arm. "You took long enough, and don't try to act cool." Despite the force of the blow, Giros didn't flinch. "So," he began, "what do you plan to do with this thing?" Leonia blinked, confused. "What thing?" "Him." Giros gestured towards Sherry. "Shall I take care of him for you?" Leonia snapped back to the present. She'd almost forgotten the matter at hand. This was something she needed to handle herself. Before Leonia could speak, Sherry blurted out, "If it weren't for the Tower Master saving you, you'd be dead already." Leonia didn't deny it. She knew she could have broken free, but doing so might have cost Sherry her life. Sherry scoffed, refusing to believe it. That magic, taught by her mother, was supposed to be unbreakable. A snap of Leonia's fingers, and an identical black magic circle appeared, ensnaring Sherry. Sherry's eyes widened in disbelief. "Ow!" "This magic is easily replicated," Leonia explained. "If you want to protect those you care about, you need to become stronger." The words hit Sherry like a physical blow. They brought her mother to mind. Was she too weak? Was that why she stayed away? Was she afraid her mother would become a liability? She hadn't even the courage to see her, all because she didn't want her to get hurt. In the ruthless war for the throne, family became nothing more than tools to be used against one another. But Sherry longed to see her mother, to be with her. Tears streamed down Sherry's face. She offered no resistance as the darkness began to consume her. She accepted her weakness, wishing only that she wouldn't be born into royalty in her next life. Suddenly, Leonia grabbed her arm, yanking her back from the brink. "Why aren't you fighting back? Do you want to die that badly?" She looked Sherry directly in the eyes. "Listen to me. I will become emperor, but I won't kill you, and I won't stoop to using your mother against you. If you want to see her, then go and find her. I'll guarantee her safety." Leonia envied Sherry. At least she had a mother. In both her lives, Leonia had never truly known a mother's love. Sherry finally broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. She resolved to bring her mother back tomorrow and to protect her. Grabbing Leonia's collar, she cried, "Why are you so nice? I hate you." Giros watched the scene unfold, surprised. "Your Highness," he remarked, "you seem to be getting kinder." Leonia didn't deny it. She wasn't the witch anymore. She had family, friends. In this life, she could finally live like a normal person, experiencing joy and connection. Giros offered no reply, silently hoping she would achieve her desires. He prepared to take his leave. He needed to be ready before Carol's king arrived in the Empire. Leonia's eyes darkened. "Who did you say is coming?" "You heard right. King Akuz of Corel is coming to visit the Empire." Upon hearing this news, Leonia immediately sought out the Emperor. "Father, can you let me meet the King of Corel?" The Emperor initially intended to refuse, but after Leonia's persistent pleas, he finally agreed. Overjoyed, Leonia threw herself into the Emperor's arms. "Thank you, Father. This time, you won't escape from me so easily." The next morning, Leonia and Case were strolling in the garden when Sherry suddenly appeared. Standing behind her was none other than her mother. This time, she had brought a gift specifically for Leonia as an apology for impersonating her previously. But remembering the incident with Ibeck, Leonia felt a sudden, inexplicable unease. Sherry, seeing right through her apprehension, said, "What is it? Something strange? Open it. It's not like I'm giving it to you because I like you. We're still rivals." The moment Leonia unwrapped the gift, she froze. Sherry had given her a small doll that looked exactly like her mother. In that instant, a wave of longing for her mother washed over her. She desperately wanted to see her mother. "Thank you, Sherry." This entire scene was witnessed by the Emperor from afar. Seeing the sadness in Leonia's expression, the Emperor felt a pang of sympathy. He finally understood why he had acted so strangely towards Leonia before. He had loved this child all along. He rushed over, took Leonia's small hand in his, and pulled her into a hug. "Leonia, don't look so sad. I want you to always be happy." Leonia, coming back to herself, realized she still had her father and everyone else who cared for her. "Father, you're the best." Tears welled up. The Emperor finally understood his own heart. In the eyes of others, he was the cold-blooded killer who had murdered 37 siblings to claim the throne, indifferent to all his children. But with Leonia's arrival, he smiled at his child for the first time, intervened in the war of succession for the first time, and now, for the first time, felt sorrow at seeing his child's sadness. He may not have been a good father, but all he wanted now was to protect Leonia. He truly hoped this child would always be happy. So, he asked Leonia, "Do you still want to be emperor?" Leonia's answer was firm. Yes. Only by becoming emperor could she fulfill her plan for revenge. But the emperor warned her, that path is bound to be dangerous. Leonia was well aware of this. "Then I'll become even stronger. And even if I become emperor, I won't kill my other siblings. No one in the royal family will die from now on. You're still young. When you grow up, you'll understand. To become emperor, you not only need to be strong yourself, but you also need the support of many powerful factions. Then I'll earn the support of those nobles. And if I'm ever in danger, Father will be there to protect me, won't you?" The emperor smiled. "Of course. If Leonia were to become emperor, perhaps all my children could survive and leave the palace safely when they come of age." Just then, the emperor's gaze fell upon the doll in Leonia's hand. He recognized it as Leonia's mother, and the sight brought his own wife to mind. "Leonia, what did your mother write her notebook?" Leonia stiffened. She couldn't tell her father about the soul transfer. If she did, she might lose him. So, she stammered, "Mother said she would give me a family, let me live happily, and that she loved me very much. I love Mother too, even though I've never met her." The emperor's heart was troubled. Why hadn't his name been mentioned even once in the notebook? Ipella had said the emperor was the strongest, but she had never said she loved him. "Leonia, I have something to attend to. I'll be going now." On the other side, Rodri was discussing matters with the nobles when Leonia suddenly barged in. Before he could even greet her, Leonia demanded to know why he hadn't told her about the king of Corell's visit to the empire. The nobles present were stunned. How dare she speak to the first prince in such a tone? Did she have a death wish? But in the next moment, Rodri embraced Leonia. "I'm so sorry. I've been so busy lately that I completely forgot." He then proceeded to introduce the surrounding nobles to Leonia. Leonia, already impatient, was about to leave. But then she remembered what her maid had told her. When meeting nobles, always act amiable and approachable. Leonia took a deep breath, putting on an incredibly cute expression. She chirped, "Hello, everyone. My name is Leonia." This instantly captivated everyone present. They were amazed that such an adorable voice could exist. But as soon as the nobles left, she immediately reverted to her usual demeanor. "When Father asks you to meet the king of Corell, take me with you." "Understood." Her words instantly piqued Rodri's interest. "What, don't you like the kingdom of Corell?" "Of course not. I hate that kingdom. I dream of destroying it." Hearing this, the first prince's interest intensified. "How about this? I'll help you destroy the kingdom of Corell, and you marry me." Soon, the day of the banquet arrived. Lakis sat alone in a corner. He was incredibly irritated. "These clueless fools dare to slight me? Even if I am the strongest magic swordsman on the continent, even if I am the emperor of the Hades Empire, when I conquer the entire continent, I will repay today's humiliation tenfold." Then he thought of Leonia. He had heard that Leonia was a descendant of dragons and a genius who broke through 3 levels of magic at the age of 3. But a child like that should be easy to deceive, right? He approached Leonia, putting on a gentlemanly facade and greeting her. Leonia, fully aware of his true nature, remained indifferent. Lakis leaned in close, threatening in a low voice. "It's best to keep our last encounter a secret, wouldn't you say?" Unbeknownst to him, this played right into Leonia's hands. She exclaimed loudly, "That was just me getting lost in the Moaso forest and happening to run into you. And I also remember you calling yourself emperor back then. This statement instantly sparked murmurs among the surrounding nobles. A tiny kingdom like Corel dares to call its ruler emperor. Lacus hastily explained that Leonia must have misheard. His expression turned cold. How could I possibly say such a thing? Isn't that right, Imperial Princess? The pressure Lacus exerted made Leonia recoil in fear. But she wasn't one to back down easily. Leonia rushed to the Emperor's side. Father, I'm scared of that man. He keeps trying to get close to me. It's strange. Hearing this, the Emperor stood up, an icy aura instantly sweeping across the room. Lacus of Corel, what business do you have with the Imperial Princess? This terrifying power truly frightened Lacus. He quickly bowed in apology, explaining that he actually wanted to speak with the Emperor. The Emperor gently set Leonia down. Then I'd like to hear it. What business do you have with me? But Lacus's next words shocked Leonia. To strengthen the alliance between the Kingdom of Corel and the Empire, I request that you allow my child to marry the 12th Imperial Princess. He'd actually made his move to prevent Leonia from being married off to Corel. Rodri and Nicol both drew their swords, ready to teach the presumptuous Lacus a lesson. And the Emperor, no longer as cold and ruthless as before, was determined to protect not just Leonia, but all of his children. All of this stemmed from Lacus's request to the Emperor to have Leonia marry his child. In return, he offered the mining rights to the southern Curia Mountains to the Empire. The Curia Mountains produced a continuous supply of gems, which could further solidify the alliance between the two nations. However, before the Emperor could respond, Nicol and Rodri stepped forward. Are you joking? Did you even ask Leonia's opinion? Did you even ask my opinion? Leonia is going to marry me in the future. Hey, can you stop spouting nonsense in this situation? Rodri couldn't understand what was wrong. I'm being sincere. He hadn't expected Lacus to simply snap his fingers and dispel the magic held by both Rodri and Corel. I advise you, Lacus stated coolly, not to flaunt your power before a true master. Harriet had seen enough. Why isn't His Majesty intervening? Is he going to let that man continue to act so arrogantly in front of the Imperial Princess? Unbeknownst to her, Lacus's actions had provided the Emperor with ample justification to intervene. In the next instant, a terrifying wave of ice magic spread through the air. Lacus Corel, you are too arrogant. You dare lay a hand on my children in my presence. Both Rodri and Corel were astonished. This was the first time their father had referred to them as my children. Lacus tried to defend himself, but the ice magic had already encased him, rendering him immobile. Return to Corel immediately. This is my final act of mercy towards you. The mysterious man, observing from afar, took note. Seems like everything's under control. I can leave now. But just then, Leona approached. Leona's expression was serious. When did Lacus get married? Giros thought for a moment. About 5 years ago. I heard it was a grand wedding. He didn't notice Leona clenching their fists. 5 years ago, shortly after Leona's death, Lacus had married someone else. Was that why he had been so eager to kill Leona? Leona struggled to suppress their rage, a burning desire for revenge rising within them. Giros sensed something was amiss. He couldn't understand Leona's anger. Leona replayed Lacus's actions from earlier that day. Why had Lacus suggested Leona marry his son? And that look in his eyes, it was the same look he had worn when he killed Leona before. Had Lacus begun to suspect Leona's true identity? Leona wondered where they had slipped up. The answer came quickly. That inexplicable encounter with Lacus after Leona's disappearance. He must have tampered with Leona's residence. Turning to Giros, Leona asked, "Can you keep a secret?" "Of course. I almost drowned once and didn't even cry for help." Giros's flippant attitude didn't inspire much confidence. But Leona had no other choice. "Come with me." In a flash, they arrived at Leona's former residence. There must be some kind of magic placed here. Leona turned to ask for Giros's help, only to find him already sprawled on the floor. "Your Highness, you're a witch." Back at the palace, Nicol and Rodri wore grave expressions. "I don't understand. Why did His Majesty call us my children? Has he lost his mind?" Harriet suddenly appeared. "As you can see, His Majesty has changed." The two princes were bewildered. "Why? He has no reason to change. You should thank the Imperial Princess. She awakened His Majesty's paternal love." Though they didn't reply, their expressions spoke volumes. This feeling was truly strange. I've heard Leona call him Papa. Can I call him that too? Rodri disagreed. Wouldn't that be awkward? Let's stick with father. Unbeknownst to them, the emperor had overheard their conversation. Both princes froze, mortified. The emperor, however, was equally flustered, his ears noticeably red. Call me whatever you like. Finally, Leona revealed their secret to Gyros. Upon learning the truth, Gyros immediately dropped to his knees. He had always longed to meet a witch. Your Highness, you must have met my brother. Gyros' sudden seriousness prompted Leona to search their memories. A familiar face, strikingly similar to Gyros, surfaced. I think I have. He's your brother. The man, like Gyros, always wore a carefree smile. One of the few humans whose strength rivals my own, Leonia's. And that man always went on about his older brother. My brother's incredibly strong, you know? He could take down someone like you with one hand. Tears unconsciously streamed down Gyros' face at these words. He recalled the joyful look on his younger brother's face when he first learned magic. He never imagined he held such a place in his brother's heart. Your Highness, was my brother truly that strong? Leonia was taken aback, unsure why Gyros would ask such a question. After a moment's thought, she declared resolutely he was strong, exceptionally strong. A happy smile spread across Gyros' face. He was my brother. He was always my pride. Once Gyros had calmed down, the two resumed their search for the magic circle Lakis had left behind. But after searching for a long while, they found nothing. Just as they were stumped, Leonia's gaze fell upon the death god statuette. Lakis had given it to her. Though reluctant to believe it, she reached out and picked it up. Were you already planning to betray me back then? Turning the statuette over, she discovered a blue magic circle etched on the bottom. A summoning circle. As soon as it senses a witch's soul, Lakis will be notified and can summon the witch to his side. A wicked smile curved Leonia's lips. I'll modify this circle. That way, Lakis won't summon me, but something far more interesting. Gyros suddenly realized something. You're a witch? Then, were you and Lakis lovers? Why do you want to kill him? Leonia's hand froze mid-motion. He proposed to me that day, but instead of a ring, he gave me a sword through the heart. She would never forget that day. When I get my hands on him, he'll regret ever being born. She tossed a book to Gyros. This will teach you the demonic language. Gyros was overjoyed, hugging Leonia impulsively. Your Highness, you're the best. Returning to the banquet hall, Leonia couldn't find her father or her siblings. A pang of loneliness struck her. Everyone else was gathered together in groups of 2 or 3. Just then, a voice interrupted her thoughts. Bunny, are you looking for us? The heartwarming scene before her stunned Leonia. What had happened while she was gone? Before she could dwell on it, the Emperor's voice reached her. The Emperor opened his arms. Leonia, come here. Leonia smiled. How could she have entertained such foolish thoughts? She ran towards the Emperor. Father, I'm here. These are her family. How could she be lonely? She should be happy. Meanwhile, a defeated Lakis arrived at the temple. He knew the temple only supported one person, the first prince, Rodri. So, upon meeting the bishop, he immediately revealed Leonia's secret, that she possessed the soul of a witch. The bishop was shocked. Can you take responsibility for your words? Lakis remained composed. He had proof. A magic circle appeared in his hand. This is a summoning circle connected to the witch's realm. He had already sensed activity within the circle. Only a witch could enter there. He was almost certain Leonia was the witch herself. He believed that once Leonia's identity was exposed, the temple would surely take action against her. Then, the temple and the empire would clash, and he would reap the benefits. As the summoning circle fully expanded, the entire temple trembled. But the next moment, the sight before him left Lakis dumbfounded. Summoned from the circle was an ancient dragon. The bishop was utterly bewildered. Lakis, this is the witch you spoke of? At the same time, Leonia sensed the activation of the circle. Lakis, I hope you like my gift. He had changed. The always cold emperor had finally changed. Leonia had awakened the paternal love hidden within his heart. Now, he was learning to care for his other children. And Nikel, who had always feared the emperor, held his hand for the first time. The warmth in his palm told Nikel this was no dream. He resolved then and there to participate in this year's hunting competition. He would capture 2 magnificent magical beasts and present the crystal stones from within them to his father, the emperor. The other, he continued, I'll give to Leona. The emperor smiled. You truly dote on your little sister. Nikel blushed crimson. It was the first time he'd received such praise from his father. Eric, observing the scene, felt a surge of warmth. It seems you'll be playing the doting father from now on, Your Majesty. You should thank the princess for that. But the emperor, ever stubborn, refused to admit it. Why should I thank the princess specifically? In the past, the princes wouldn't dare come near you. It's the princess's charm that's changed you. This palace is truly blessed to have her. The emperor slowly set down his teacup. Do you really need to tell me that? Meanwhile, Leona was preoccupied with expanding her influence. The first step to becoming emperor was securing the noble support. Gyros advised her to participate in the hunting competition. It was the perfect opportunity to display her prowess. Leona trembled at the suggestion. Gyros mistook it for fear, unaware that Leona was trembling with excitement. As a witch, she knew magical beasts intimately. This was her chance to prove her brilliance to everyone. She immediately sought out the emperor to declare her intention to participate. He refused outright. It's too dangerous. But Leona was undeterred. She was no longer the same. Her magic had advanced to level 4. Even the emperor was taken aback by such talent. Eric's jaw dropped. Her Highness is truly exceptional, as always. Papa, if you don't say anything, I'll take that as a yes. I'll catch you a wyvern, and we'll roast it and eat it together. It'll be delicious. Upon leaving the palace, Leona ran into Rodri. His face was etched with worry when he learned of her plans to participate in the hunt. He immediately guessed her motive, to win over the nobles. He couldn't allow that to happen. Just then, Sherry ran up. I'm really rooting for you in the competition. She handed Leona a strange object. I picked this up especially for you. Use it or don't, it's up to you. The day of the hunting competition arrived. Nobles placed bets on the outcome. Many favored the first prince, Rodri. Others favored the fourth prince, Nykel, as most magical beasts feared his sun god power. One bespectacled noble, however, was different. He placed all his chips on Leona. He'd been captivated by her charm ever since their last encounter. Soon, the participants, including Leona, arrived at the hunting grounds. Eric announced the rules from the stage, and the competition officially began. As soon as Leona entered the forest, she sensed a hidden killing intent. Strangely, she couldn't find a single magical beast. Unbeknownst to her, 2 figures from the temple were watching from above. They had driven away all the magical beasts to sabotage Leona's performance. This would ensure Rodri's position remained secure. But then, something unexpected happened. A tremendous explosion erupted behind them, followed by the appearance of a massive, muscular figure with glowing red eyes, a temple priest. Panic set in. Why is that thing here? The commotion caught Leona's attention. She now understood the temple was behind this. Very well then, I'll just have to deal with all of you. Meanwhile, Nykel and Rodri, having completed their hunts, were concerned by Leona's absence. Fearing for her safety, they sought out Eric. The news of Leona's disappearance sent a jolt of fear through Eric. The emperor, standing behind him, overheard everything. In an instant, terrifying ice magic swept through the entire forest. If I just level this forest, I can find Leona immediately.